So an airline pilot and an independent insurance adjuster walk into a bar. Who's buying the drinks? Well, most people would say the pilot, right? And for most people, that's kind of the obvious answer. Pilots make a lot of money, right? Adjusters, the vast majority of the country doesn't even know what one is. But in this video, you'll not only learn what an adjuster is, but we'll do a deep dive on the difference between the careers of an adjuster and an airline pilot. We'll do the actual math, cost of entry, year one income, time to real money, peak earnings, the one number that nobody, and I mean nobody, factors into these comparisons, the number that completely flips the story. I'm Matt, and I've been in the independent claims industry since the late 90s, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand why an entire career path that pays like a high status profession is sitting right in front of you. Nobody talks about. And after that, I'll show you exactly how to get started fast with few to no dead ends so that you can help people recover from natural disasters and make great money doing it. Starting now. Before I get into the numbers, I want to be fair about this. I also want to stress that while I know the independent insurance adjusting side like the back of my hand, I've spent my entire adult life in this industry. I am not a pilot, and the information in this video is researched on the old internet, so some of it may be wrong. But the broad strokes, the time it takes, how soon you can make six figures, the cost and all that stuff, I think those are pretty solid. Not cherry picking either, trying to compare the realistic paths for both of these careers, what the actual person walking in the door off the street experiences. So to start, for the pilot, that's flight school, that's building hours as a flight instructor, eventually getting to a major airline. That's kind of the runway for the airline side of things. For the adjuster, we're getting a license, we're getting trained, we're getting on rosters, we're buying a few pieces of equipment and a decent laptop, and then we're deploying for storm season. We're doing field and desk work, catastrophe claims, large loss commercial, maybe even management or executive level roles. Both are skilled professions, both pay real money, both require you to be away from home a lot. It's actually kind of apples to apples in a lot of ways. So let's run both careers side by side and see what happens. Day one, the pilot writes a check for flight school, $80,000 to $120,000, and obviously most people get student loans for this. The adjuster writes a bunch of little checks for licenses, training, gear, vehicle upgrades, 10, maybe 15 grand if you include money saved back to pay for hotels and expenses on your first claims deployment. For example, if it's a disaster that you have to travel to, and most people pay cash for this stuff, okay? Pilot is six figures in debt before they've earned $1. Adjuster is out about 10 grand and ready to deploy. Year one, the pilot is in flight school, earning $0, watching interest accrue on $100,000. The adjuster is on rosters, deploying for the first storm season, hopefully. $30,000 to $50,000, could be more depending on the season. In total transparency, it could also be less, but adjusters are slow, they're learning, but they're earning in this first year. Okay, years 2 and 3. After graduation, pilots still can't fly for an airline. FAA requires 1,500 flight hours. They graduated from school with 250, right? So most of them become flight instructors, teaching the next batch of students to grind out hours. The pay sounds okay, 25 to 40 bucks an hour, but you only get paid for billable instruction time. No shows, weather, cancellations, paperwork, all that stuff is unpaid. A full-time certified flight instructor is realistically bringing in $35,000 to maybe $60,000 a year. Again, their loan balance keeps growing with the interest and stuff. The adjuster, 2 to 3 years in, is at a minimum $60,000, and more likely well north of that, maybe up to $120,000. No startup debt, working 6 months a year. Year 4, the pilot finally hits 1,500 hours and makes it to maybe the regional airlines, where they can make $75,000 to $100,000. They still have $100,000 in flight school debt. The adjuster is at $100,000 to $150,000, still only working 6 to 9 months out of the year. So in years 5 to 10, for the pilot, maybe regional captain after a couple of years, then the jump to a major airline, Delta, United, American Southwest, etc. And then they start over, right? Seniority resets. Major first officer pay, pretty solid, apparently. 90 to 130,000 starting, growing toward maybe 200,000 by year 5 at a major airline. The adjuster by this time is very well established. 200 plus is on the table for the top performers. Again, 6 months of work every single year. The pilot has been investing 12 months a year, every year, the whole way. Years 15 to 25. This is peak pilot earnings. Senior wide body captains with international routes maybe have a base salary of $350 to $470. Total compensation with profit sharing and retirement contributions, $500 to $700,000. Okay, that's doctor money, lawyer money. That's a nice house kind of money, right? Paid off house, hopefully. The adjuster ceiling is probably $200 to $300,000, maybe $350. The pilot's going to win at the top pretty decisively. But age 65 for the pilot is mandatory retirement. Federal law says so, okay? It doesn't matter how sharp the pilot feels. They got to turn in their wings. The adjuster works as long as they want. I know guys in their 70s still cranking out claims just because they want to and because they're able to. All right, now here's the scoreboard. The pilot, 15 to 25 years to get to their peak. They've got 100 to maybe 160 with interest in student loan debt, and they work 12 months out of the year. They can earn $500,000 plus at the top, but they're done at 65. For the adjuster, 7 to 10 years, probably less to peak, under $10,000 to start, working 6 months out of the year, 200 to 300K at the top, retire whenever the heck you want. Okay, but the pilot seems to win on the ceiling. The adjuster wins on access, on speed, on debt, and honestly on freedom. I think it's important to point out that the age of starting is also kind of important here. And I think this goes with really any career choice. If a guy or gal is 23 years old and looking at spending the rest of their lives doing one or the other of these career paths, this really is honestly a toss-up. And I think this is where doing what you want to do versus trying to find the most lucrative career is going to be the biggest decision for you. You're going to get someplace in both paths. And honestly, if you start this early, you're going to spend a lot more time in the peak earning phases of being a pilot, right? Which could be pretty juicy. Now, if you're 40 or 50, like you probably are if you're watching this video, unless you have a burning desire to become an airline pilot, you're just not going to get to the same place as quickly as if you become an independent adjuster right now. And if your life's dream was to become a pilot, I'm wondering why maybe you didn't start when you were 23. And if you hold up the net earnings pre-tax of these two careers after, we'll just say 15 years, which I think if you're middle-aged, it's about what you're looking at, give or take. The pilot makes $1.65 million net after paying off flight school, and they're working 12 months out of the year. They're still climbing at that point, and their peak earnings are still ahead. But for the adjuster, you're looking at more like a $2.3 million net after subtracting startup costs, and you're only working 6 months out of the year. The adjuster nets $650,000 more pre-tax over the first 15 years and working roughly half the calendar days to do it. But Matt, don't independent adjusters have to pay all their own expenses? Yes, they do. And the beauty of that is that you have control over a lot of those costs. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you're spending about $4,000 a month in hotel, fuel, software expenses, etc. over the course of your 6 months a year for 15 years. That's still nearly $2 million in net earnings. Having to pay your own expenses, to me, was a feature and not a bug of being an independent adjuster. I can drive whatever vehicle I want, get whatever laptop makes sense, pick out my own clothes for the most part, pick out my own health insurance. This is kind of a big deal, okay? And remember, how many days a year are you actually working? The pilot is on a fixed schedule. FAA flight time limits cap them around 1,000 hours a year in the air. Add in training days, reserve time, travel to and from base, recurrent checks, simulator time, layovers, crashing at hotels with other flight crew. The pilot is committed to the job most of the calendar year. The adjuster in this scenario works their tail off through storm season, which is May through November, about 6, 7, 8 months, okay? Say you're an experienced adjuster bringing in $150,000 for the 6-month season. If you choose to work those other 6 months, and I strongly suggest that you find something to do that earns money during your off time as an adjuster, you can make a little bit more, or you can make a lot more than you do with just your adjuster pay. The pilot making $150,000 is working 12 months for that money. Their effective annualized rate is $150,000. Some adjusters work daily claims in the off season. Some take desk work to stay sharp. Some travel. Some build a side business. I myself built a hunting and fishing videography business as my sort of side hustle when I was an adjuster. Pilot doesn't necessarily have those options, or at least as much freedom as the adjuster does to do those kinds of things. They're flying the schedule that the airline gives to them. And listen, I'm not going to pretend that either career is easy, because they're absolutely not. The pilot is away from home quite a lot, but so is the field adjuster. The pilot has a known schedule 3 months out. The adjuster has whatever the weather decides. The pilot has union protection and a clear seniority path, but the adjuster is an independent contractor and builds their reputation claim by claim. Different trade-offs, not better, not necessarily worse, just different. The pilot's life, from what I can tell, seems to be a bit more structured, but the adjuster life is more entrepreneurial, and they're both dangerous. But if you want predictability and you don't mind decades of climbing, go fly airplanes. By all accounts, it sounds like it really is a great career. If you want to bet on yourself, hit your earning peak faster, and own half your year, adjusting is hiding in plain sight. And here's the thing I want you to walk away with. This isn't really a video about which career pays more. The senior airline captain person absolutely out-earns the adjuster at the very top. This is actually a video about access. To become an airline pilot, you need $120,000 plus and 4 to 6 years before you're earning a whole lot of money. To become a working independent adjuster, you need around $10,000 and one good storm season to kick it all off. That's about it. And the training takes days, or at the most a couple of weeks. There is a high-paying skill profession sitting right here, and believe it or not, it still has more demand than qualified people to fill it. But nobody's talking about it because it doesn't have a TV show, except for Adjuster TV, and it definitely doesn't have a recruiter at the high school career fair. The barrier to entry is the real story, not the ceiling. And if you want to walk under your first storm already knowing how to work a claim instead of it being your first time seeing one, grab a training pass to the Claims Skills Manual at adjustertv.com/manual. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great storm.